This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
We can't talk about your experience in ECW without talking about Alan Jackson. His comment is, do you find it ironic that RVD had his title stripped for weed when so much of the roster was on drugs or steroids? Do you know what the plans were long-term for RVD as champion? So let's attack those one at a time. You said earlier, I felt like I was going to be ECW world champion. Did you assume that would be with a pay-per-view match with Rob Van Dam?
I didn't know. I knew that Rob was going to win the title, and I probably would eventually have beaten him. I don't know where they were going to go with it, because I think that at the time we were both baby faces, but I didn't really know when I would win the title. I just knew it was being talked about.
Now let's talk about the drug component. And you've been open and honest about your struggles with painkillers. Even earlier in this same show, there was a fair or not, there was a sort of understood in the business that ECW was a little more liberal with their drug policy, or lack thereof. Did you see a different lifestyle with those guys? Unfortunately, so many of them, like Axel and of course Balls Mahoney, we've lost from drug overdoses. Was it apparent that other guys were really struggling with their substance abuse in the ECW locker room?
I didn't see a lot of substance abuse. I think that Rob getting hit for marijuana, it kind of sucks, because, nowadays marijuana is legal.
No big deal.
But, back then it was a big issue, and it's one of the big no-nos that you weren't allowed to do. You weren't allowed to take drugs, and you weren't allowed to take steroids. And Rob wasn't the only one that got titles stripped from him or got suspended. Yeah. I got suspended because I failed a drug test. If you're going to fail a drug test, whether it's marijuana, painkillers, steroids, it doesn't matter what it is, you're going to have, the company's going to do something. They're going to suspend you or fine you or both. And with Rob, they decided to strip the title from him, and they probably fined him. But, that's a chance you take when you're going to smoke weed. And I'm saying this, today you can smoke weed just about anywhere you want to. But back then you couldn't. So that was one of the topics of this, the discussion was, should weed be a drug that is illegal? And back then it really was.
Weed is obviously being decided by the different states. It's ever evolving. Just recently in Alabama, it was, I think it's official now that it's okay for medical use. And that's, of course, the first step based on what we've seen in California and other places. But my question to you is in regards to a derivative of that. That's an Eric Bischoff word. CBD. Is that something that you have found useful in your recovery, or is that something that is really not on your radar?
I've tried CBD. It works. The cream works on my joints for a good hour. It doesn't last really long, but it is effective if you want to get a workout in, so you're not sore before you start training. But it doesn't do anything long-term for me. So I wasn't that excited about it. It is what it is. I think it does reduce swelling temporarily, and that's a good thing. And I think if you want to use CBD, go ahead and use it. It's a pretty safe product.
Do you know what the WWE's marijuana policy is now? Obviously you don't, you're not there today, but before the pandemic, when you're still touring, and it's legal in so many states here in America, but it is still sort of a gray area. Had the WWE, as far as you know, sort of loosened up on their marijuana policy just based on it becoming legal in so many states?
Well, I think that the WWE, what they are doing right now, and I don't know if it's changed since I left, but they would just fine the wrestler. So you're going to get drug tested 7 times a year. If you're going to fail 7 times a year, and this is one of the wrestlers, this is what I heard one of the wrestlers said, and I might as well say who it is, Randy Orton and Rob Van Dam. They basically told the company that they would, how much are the fines and how many drug tests will I do this year? So they wanted to pay the money up front.
That's hilarious.
So I think the fine was $2,000. So they just said, here, take 14 grand. I'm good. So they would bypass the tests and they wouldn't get suspended. So I think marijuana, they've been lighter on about because it's not banned anymore. You don't get suspended, but you still get fined.
You know, I know some people are going to take issue with that and say it's a workaround, but I think marijuana is the one drug where it's like, man, if it's legal in, you know, a large portion of the country, it kind of is what it is, especially if you're touring and you're in those states and you're doing what's legal. You know, for years it's been legal in Nevada. And if the WWE ran a show in Nevada and guys went and had dinner and then afterwards had an edible and a few beers, I don't see how they could get in trouble. They should not get in trouble for that, in my opinion. Like, it's legal here. I'm not breaking any laws. And I don't know. That's probably.
I totally agree. If it's legal in that state and you're doing it that night, it should be fine. You know, if you get drug tested that week, you should say, well, I was in Nevada.
Yeah.
Smoked some weed when I was there. And so I shouldn't be fined or suspended. I agree with you because it was a legal process. You
right.
You did do it in a legal state. So I don't see why marijuana is even an issue today. It should be done. No more fining, no more suspending.
I totally agree. I'm curious. I know you weren't watching wrestling back then, but did any of the old timers ever tell you about the Hacksaw Jim Duggan Iron Sheik marijuana arrest back in the day that brought so much shame to the WWF?
Is that when Iron Sheik stuffed something in Hacksaw's bag or something?
You know, there's a good guy and a bad guy, and they get pulled over, and they had marijuana in the car. So they were quote unquote breaking kayfabe, and they had marijuana in the car. And they're supposed to be, you know, heroes to children, so they can sell dolls. And it was a black guy. And so for a lot of time, I think people thought that will be on the list forever. And then here it pops up again, but this time it's not, you know, a baby face and a heel so much as it as the world champion. And so that gets headlines everywhere, you know, in this clickbait society we live in. If you can, you know, arrest the WWE champion with a drug charge, that's going to get headlines everywhere.
Oh, without a doubt. That would definitely get headlines. And I didn't know about Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Iron Sheik getting stopped, and they were smoking marijuana, and they were babyface and heel. Didn't they had a program together at the time, right?
Yeah. So, you know, at the arena, we hate each other. We're Iran versus America, but then, hey, let's go get a doob and make the next town. So shouldn't have done that for a variety of reasons. Let my family save your family some cash. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but we will save you money. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of how much. SaveWithConrad.com. So chat me up about the end point. You know, it feels like when Vince comes to you and he says, hey, I'm launching this new brand. I want you to be the face of it. And you're concerned about money, and he calms that fear. It feels like he might say, this isn't forever. I just need to get this thing up and running. We're going to have you here for 6 months or a year or 18 months, or by WrestleMania, we'll have you back. Is there an endpoint discussed with Vince, or do you think just for the foreseeable future, this is it?
I just think that he never discussed anything of the length period of time or anything like that. He just wanted me to be the name and face of ECW. And I figured it was going to run as long as ECW ran. So, you know, I was willing to do it. I just, you know, at the time I needed a lot of rest. I needed to be at home to nurse my injuries, and I couldn't afford to go there because they just started a new promotion and a bunch of guys on the SmackDown and Raw roster were injured. So I didn't have any time to really heal. I had to continue on until somebody could replace me.
Gil Boldberg wants to know, was Foley injured when you attacked him on Raw after it was announced you were going to ECW? Based on your demeanor coming to the ring, it looked like a shoot. Okay, I'm sure it wasn't a shoot, but what do you remember about that night and working with Foley? Foley at this point was not necessarily super active in the ring. He would come back here and there, but he is somebody you probably wanted to be a little more careful with. He's not on a touring brand at the time. He's not callous to taking bumps 4 or 5 days a week. What do you remember about that interaction with Foley when you announced that you're going to ECW?
Well, I just remember, you know, laying Mick out and, you know, there, you know, Mick, he was a guy that would tell you, listen, I'll do whatever you want me to do. So he was willing to do whatever had to be done that night. He would have taken a suplex from the top rope. He would have jumped off a ladder. Mick Foley will do anything, anytime. And that's how he is. That's the kind of guy he is. He's willing to put his body on the line no matter how banged up he is or if he's not banged up. He's going to do it regardless. And I knew that about Mick. And, you know, we talked about what we wanted to do that night, and he was cool with it.
Here's a good one from Greg. Had you stayed longer in the WWE in 06, do you know what the plan was for you in ECW?
Well, I know the plan was to get me the ECW world title by the end of the year. Of course, that never happened because I quit by August. So, you know, I never got to see it come to fruition.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.